like to call to order this meeting of the Urbana City Council for Monday, October 28th, 2024. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu?
Here.
Mr. Evans?
Here.
Ms. Hersey?
Here.
Ms. Colasetti?
Here.
Ms. Bishop? Ms. Wilkin?
Here.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Here.
Mayor Marlin?
Here.
Next item is approval of the minutes from the previous meeting of October 7th, 2024, Committee of the Whole. Is there a motion?
So moved.
By Mary Alice. Is
Second.
there a second? Seconded by Sharice. Any substantial changes? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, same sign. That motion passes. Are there any additions to the agenda? We do have one request to move item J, which is reports of officers, and this report will include the fire station update and a brief update on the Barry Dunn contract for the Alternative Response Task Force. We've had a request to move that under item E. Is there a motion?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Could you clarify? I'm sorry. Under item E, council input and communications, do you just mean after that?
After that, yes.
Okay, thank you.
So item J will appear after item E. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
That motion passes. All right, we'll move on to presentations. We have none scheduled for tonight. Is there any public input? If anyone wishes to address the Urbana City Council, please step to the microphone. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to council input and communications. Mary Alice.
So I'd just like to share with council and the public that we had an update from the Regional Planning Commission last Friday that there were 1,400 interviews for LIHEAP, and it just opened. I believe the amount that was estimated was $400,000 out of those 1,400.
Jaya.
Yeah, I just wanted to congratulate Sergeant Gardner and Detective Bennett for being named part of the 2024 class of the 40 Under 40 by Central Illinois Business something or other. But just it was a great celebration and really incredible group of people who were honored this year, and very proud to see our city so well represented.
Chris.
To piggyback that, I want to congratulate Deputy Chief Dave Smicer and Lieutenant Zach McClick. Thank you. For their promotion and their swearing-in ceremony Friday, October 25th.
Seeing no further communication, we'll move on to the reports of officers. And up first will be the fire station construction update by a number of public works representatives and perhaps fire department representatives. We have Public Works Director Tim Cowan and Project Manager Ray Garcia.
Good evening, Council. We just wanted to come and give you guys a little update. It's been a while since we've talked about this project. This is one of the bigger projects that we've got going on and probably will have going on for a while. So we wanted to check in with you guys and just give you an update of where we're at and allow you an opportunity to ask us any questions you may have. Progress report overview, just this 4 points we're going to hit: cost summary, the diversity utilization summary, the schedule, and then some progress pictures and videos if you haven't had a chance to get by the site yourself, or both of them. So looking at the cost summary, the big picture overview, our original budget in the left column there, $1.2 million for land, $1.2 million for design, $13,829,094 was our GMP price with PJ Hare to construct the facility, with about $570,000 left for furnishings, fixtures, and equipment, for a total budget of $16.8 million. The combination of the construction and the FF&E is the $14.4 million that we discussed in depth in January and February going into the project. The estimated cost to date is just kind of a reflection of where we're at. So the land has all been purchased, 1.175 million total. The design, we've paid about 75% of that out at this point, and we'll still owe them money through construction administration through the duration of construction. They do shop drawings, submittal review. They help us address any issues that come up that may need to have design pivot during this. And then construction, the bigger dollar figure, about 2.7 million that we've spent to date. And just for reference, that money lags about a month behind, so we're about a month past that. And then our furnishing, fixtures, and equipment, we've made a couple larger purchases, such as the alerting system and the access controls contracts that will go into this facility. Total spend to date is about $5 million on this, or about 30% of the total budget. Projecting final cost, the land is final. Design is just a projection of what we think it'll take based on our contractual obligations to get through construction, a little bit under our budget. Construction, as noted here, is about $500,000 under our GMP that we are currently not projecting that we'll have to spend out of allowances and contingencies which are in that, which that would unspent allowances and contingencies come back to the city post-contract completion. And part of thinking we don't think that we're going to be spending a whole lot beyond what we've spent currently on that is we're above grade now. We had a lot of unknowns with soil remediation and things like that Ray will touch on in a little bit. The big ticket items tied to some of those are really just anticipated allowances. Due to the timeline prior to us knowing whether the grant was going to be extended, we went out to bid prior to getting final permit comments, so there was some slight adjustments for that came out of contingency. And one of the bigger items is with the Bradley site moving, anchor institutions are all tied to dark fiber here throughout the city and the region via UC2B. That was a movement about a decade ago. That was a thing that we've got to extend now that we've moved it off of Lincoln over to Bradley. That is not included in that, but we think that the final cost is reflective of that being included there. And then the furnishing, fixtures, and equipment, we expect that we will spend all of that money. But our total overall expectation is to be about 97% of original project cost. So essentially on budget, slightly under budget. If that $500,000 remains unspent, that will roll back to the city for other uses. So then looking at our diversity utilization summary, so the total contract BEP participation upon signing the contract with PJ Hare was about 24%. The makeup was about 9.8% minority, 3.1% women-owned businesses, and 11.5% other based on this list. The other is primarily related to persons with disabilities via our electrical subcontractor. The total contract BEP utilization to date is about 12%, and that's really just a function of the logistics of construction. So some of our bigger ticket items, the structural steel is our minority contractor, the electrical is our person with disabilities contractor. So those things have yet to really roll up heavily, and then the minority, I know there's some landscaping in there with some other things that have not yet come through on pays. But we do still anticipate hitting that 24% still. Just some of that's lagging behind a little bit just due to the nature of construction and the subcontractors that have that work. From there, I'm going to turn it over to Ray, and he's going to talk a little bit about schedule and just go through some construction progress with you.
All right, there we go. So first off, as you guys know, we started back in April, cut the ribbon, got started in May. So here in May, we then started continuing to progress, and so the intent was to be completed by next May of 2024. So we were able to hit 2025. So we were able to hit both our April and May dates in 2024. Unfortunately, we are approximately just in overall process about a month behind from that's complete turnover. So that's from the station actually being operational. So some of those are just in process of materials on demand, so on and so forth. So we are approximately, as Tim indicated before, we're 30% on our spend, but we're 20% in overall construction. So we'll go over to the Bradley Avenue site. As you guys remember, this real blank site with the home on it next to the water plant looks very different today. As you guys, if you've had a chance to drive by, there's quite a bit going on there, and we're excited that this week the intent is to start hanging trusses on this particular site. So that's putting a roof on the site, and within the next month we plan to be enclosed. So one of the things that we were really priding ourselves of where we're at today is the fact that we're averaging about 25 to 36 people per day on both of our projects, and it's over 4,000 man-hours spent without an incident or injury. So we're extremely proud of that. Go ahead, Tim. Go ahead next to the next one. So this is the Bradley Foundations. As we were talking about before, in some of those contingencies and allowance monies that we had, what Tim was talking about when we're out of the ground is that these foundation systems are done. Both of our sites, we encountered very poor soils at both of our sites, so we had to have proper plan before we were going into it, how to remediate that situation so that we could reduce costs and increase our schedule. So with a good plan, of course, with proper prior planning, allows for us to increase our productivity and continue and keep ourselves within budget. This is a pretty cool slide here. This is actually a video. As you guys can see, this is the demising wall here on Bradley Avenue, which is in the middle of the site. So one side of this is going to be your bays, and the other side is going to be where the firemen will live. Same here, and this is what it looks like today. This is a pretty good example of what the Bradley Avenue site is like I was indicating, this week is extremely exciting. Unfortunately, it does appear that we're going to have a couple bad days of weather, so we likely might not set trusses till the end of the week. But the majority of the concrete's poured. We only have one pour left at this site, and then we'll be able to start framing interior walls and sheets. So this is the exciting part where it starts looking like a structure.
Yeah, and just for reference, the important side of this in getting this done schedule-wise is to avoid winter conditions so that we get encapsulated so that work can continue through the winter effectively.
Yep, Philo Road site, everybody remembers it as a big wide open field that was really sitting in a hole. So again, one of the challenges that we had on this site as well, same kind of deal, poor soil conditions. So we did something that was really unique. It's actually been done here in Urbana quite a bit, but cement soil stabilization. So what that allows us to do is it allows us to create compactable soils, bearing soils for our buildings to be built on, also for us to be able to bring up the site significantly faster than using traditional methods. So what this allowed us to do is a substantial amount of soil that was brought in here, over 7,000 yards of soil, which if you guys happen to notice the extremely large mound of soil that was over at the county jail, there's about a quarter of it that went here. So it's actually on our site. We recycled some site from the county, which allowed us to have a finite location of where our soil's going for our contractors to bid against for a short run in soil. So we provided that as a cost-saving measure. And so then this allowed us to avoid any soil remediation issues. We did it while we went. Again, Philo Road foundations, poor soils here, but with that soil stabilization, we had zero additional charges in regards to dealing with our footings while we were doing that because of our plan going into the project.
This is an interesting picture just to look at the footprint of the new station versus the old station across the street for scale.
Yep.
We've all talked about these are bigger, they're built for growth, they're built for health and wellness, but this is a good visual just to really see the representation here. Again, this is just another video. MTD has been gracious enough to work with us and get some shots through construction. We're going to try to have them do a couple more intervals of this so that when we get done with this, we can kind of piecemeal something together that can just be a promotional thing of the project.
On the left-hand side, that's the hose tower. I know when a lot of you, when we were going through the original programming of this, you had the opportunity to see some of these designs. And this one in particular, as you can see, this is it when it was starting, but you can also see it stacked there to your right in the picture, which is what it looks like today. So it doesn't look very tall in this particular picture, but when you walk up to it, you'll realize how different these stations are from the conditions that the guys are currently working in. So again, schedule. Unfortunately, Mayor, I know we made a promise. We're working on closing the gap. So again, the issue with winter conditions actually kind of forces us to do that. We just need Mother Nature to play ball with us over the next couple of weeks, get an envelope, and we'll do everything we can to get back on track. It gets mentioned at every progress meeting, so.
With that, I think we would just accept any questions. We just wanted to give a progress report on this. I know I drive by the Philo Road one multiple times a week, and I know the Bradley one's about 3 to 4 weeks ahead of that one, so that usually gives me a good feeling. So then when I go check in with Ray, I know where things are at, but not all of you are going to go by these stations every day, so we wanted to come and give you a little glance at where we're at and where we're hoping to be. I think when the trusses get set, everything's going to look very real to people. So,
Any questions? Grace?
Thank you. I had a few questions I think are hopefully quick. Could I just recap? The geothermal is planned to be installed from the get-go, right?
The wells are already installed.
That's what those were. And solar ready that we'd install after the first year.
That's the tentative plan in the CIP.
And then I was wondering about trees. We'd had some discussion connected you with Solar Grazia about Philo, and also Lincoln would be great, and adding another arborist to the city. So I was wondering about those plans of having kind of publicly available food-producing trees on these sites.
Yeah, we haven't taken any steps with that yet, but some of that is with our land development code. We have certain minimums we have to meet. Tree Commission has recommendations as to what we can and will and won't do in places, and we have maintenance responsibilities with those. Certainly open to that concept. I know you put me in contact with Solar Grazia. They had an event going on late October. I've been in and out of the office. We haven't connected again on that yet, but I think that's a concept that, pending where the city council wants to spend their money and what they want to do, we can explore that more. And I would also say that doesn't have to happen with construction. I would actually advise probably against putting too much in the way of construction, so we have functional space to work for the time being.
Yeah, just the idea of it, it's best practices with anything, just thinking about it sooner rather than later.
Yep.
And then just last question or thought process, I think more so for the wider group, was about the use of the old stations. I think the plan was to demo and sell the lots or whatnot, but especially given some of our other conversations, seems like a really big waste of a space that's weather stable to some extent as a storm shelter for emergency housing, especially during colder months. So I think that'd be an important thing to consider before demolishing two weatherproof buildings going into winter with a really high number of people unsheltered in the community.
Just a couple notes on that is, at least for this winter, the main stations will stay operational because this won't be functional until next June. In addition to that, there's a number of other things that we'll need to address this facility if it's going to maintain inhabitability into the future, which was part of the facilities master plan where we looked at rehab, expand, renovate versus build new, and the investment to do all of that at that facility didn't make sense versus the investment of building new. I don't know that I don't know that it's decided what is going to happen with these buildings. They certainly could serve a purpose, depending on what the use is, and that could be explored further. And there may be economic development drivers here or there that could tell us to go one way with one and another with another. But as far as I know, there's been no decision made on what is going to happen with those. But probably between now and next June, we should put some thought into it.
Mary Alice?
So I could be wrong, but I want to congratulate you guys for staying under budget. I don't remember an infrastructure project actually coming in under budget, so thank you for being mindful of that.
We appreciate that. There was a healthy contingency in it, but we are under. We intend to stay under is the hope. So,
Chris?
Exactly what I wanted to talk about. Total estimation right now, we're at 16 million. but I don't see the interest. What happened to that?
That's not related to the project, that's related to the financing.
Right,
So I
so
didn't.
we're at 19 still, right? And
Eventually, we're going to have to incur the financing, the bonding and things like that, that will, I think the old slide was like 2.2 million was the other chunk of that capital for what you're talking about, the
Right.
interest.
Right, right.
That's not reflected in the project, that's reflected in the
Right.
financing.
Yeah, I thought so. And then, Tim, we talk about everything else, the roads and everything else. We talk about this thing called inflation, the 50% inflation. Inflation makes everything double. I noticed that the Park District's Health and Wellness Center, way over budget. The Bennett Center, or the County Plaza, they estimated to be at 20 million. They're up to 23 million. So, I know you probably can't, and I don't want to discourage you from being under budget and in budget, but this monster called 50% inflation, where are we at and what?
So, I mean, the fact is this price reflects some of that. You know, through the design process, we continued revising our estimates, scope, the programming, the scope grew, but then also, as you guys have known since I've been here, is all I do is talk about how the costs keep going up extremely to a point that we can't plan for that. But this is fixed. This is our contract. This is our guaranteed maximum price from our contractor. So barring anything exponentially wrong, this is going to be the final say. And what I would say is that's baked into that 13 million. You know, there's a portion of which that's reflective of if we built this 5 years ago, maybe it was 10 million, you know. But this is fixed. This is where we're at. And I think it's important, you know, you talk about the roads and everything like that. Our facilities don't really have any sustainable funding source outside of general fund, outside of bonding, outside of grants, outside of anything else that we can put towards it, like some of the other infrastructure we have where we have dedicated funds for like the local motor fuel tax, state motor fuel tax, sanitary sewer fee, stormwater utility fees. So, you know, facilities is one that we have to be very prudent on, because this is kind of the unrestricted funds of the city for a thing that doesn't have dedicated funding going into it outside of our general funds.
Ray, can you comment on, is the price of supplies and materials kind of stabilized a little bit, or?
Yeah, we haven't had any issues with price of materials. It stabilized probably about 6 months to even a year ago. So by the time this project had went out, everyone had locked in their vendors. And again, we don't foresee this, but consistently we're going to continue to see that increase every year. So I mean, we expect to see, you know, you're going to expect to see between 10 and 20% increases in cost of materials, especially now after a natural disaster. The reality is with us having our construction already locked in pricing, there are potentially some of these vendors that I know have already ordered the majority of their products and have already paid for their products, and they're charging us for stored materials because they know the situations that have happened down south are going to be an issue.
Thank
you.
Any other questions? Thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
And we are keeping an eye on that calendar, so.
Yeah, we're aware. We know.
We know.
Okay, we'll move on to the other report that we wanted to provide tonight, and that is related to the Alternative Response Task Force and the Barry Dunn contract. I'll introduce this and then turn it over to City Attorney Matt Rushley. So City Council was notified earlier today, that the City of Urbana has exercised its right to terminate without cause the contract for consulting services with Barry Dunn, McNeil, and Parker, LLC. This is pursuant to City RFP 2223-05, which was the Community Safety Review. The termination becomes effective 14 days from today, per the contract terms. The termination impacts facilitating the Alternative Response Task Force process, developing the alternative response options for council consideration, and supporting implementation of an alternative response plan. So City Attorney Matt Rushley has, and I and several other staff members have been in regular communication with Barry Dunn, and Matt will provide some more information on how we got to this point.
Thanks, Mayor. As council may recall, going back a few weeks, we had the public discussion about the format of the alternative task force meetings. Council requested a resolution addressing the procedures of those task force meetings be called out specifically to be open meetings, act compliant or consistent with the regulations and the procedures in the Open Meetings Act. And so based on that, we presented and also based on some preliminary conversations with Barry Dunn about this, this resolution and what was in it, we presented a contract amendment, and that was at their request. They wanted to see, what this would entail. In addition to the amendment, we provided some details as to what this would look like from a practical standpoint, how these meetings would be conducted, what the Open Meetings Act in Illinois requires, and how that would apply in this context. Barry Dunn responded with essentially some procedures that they believe were best practices, that they're consistent with their preferred methodologies for achieving the outcomes that they consider to be consistent with how they do business in this sort of facilitation work. We negotiated with them back and forth a little bit on trying to find some common ground on a path forward that would both meet the requirements of the city of Urbana for these meetings to be open to the public, for the public to have the ability to comment, for us to take minutes and a verbatim record of all these meetings. And ultimately, we weren't able to find a path that worked for both parties, is the bottom line. And so looking at the original agreement, there's a termination provision that allows the city to terminate the agreement without cause, with 14 days notice. We did that on a mutually agreeable basis with Barry Dunn. We discussed it before we put something in writing to them. And then there's an agreement to terminate the contract, essentially, for us to exercise our contractual right. And along with that, there are some additional pieces that will wrap up over the next 14 days. One of those is consistent with the original contract. Barry Dunn will invoice the city for any work that they've done since the last time they invoiced us, which was mid-September. We'll pay the remaining obligation on that. And they'll also provide us any documentation that was produced and any data or materials that were developed preparing for the alternative task force meetings. And so anything that they've generated in terms of work product, they'll provide to the city. And then at that point, effective at the end of business on November 11th, which is Monday, we'll be sort of done with that particular contract, the consulting agreement, and the city then will need to consider paths forward in terms of how to conduct these meetings and potentially pivoting to a different consultant. So that's the update I have, and I can take questions.
Any questions for Matt? Grace?
Thank you. So I appreciate the update and information on that. And so you're saying as far as the money goes, we'll pay out whatever they've accrued so far that we haven't paid yet already, but we're not on the hook for any other monetary piece of the contract outside of what they've already done. Is that right?
It's essentially a pay-as-you-go contract, so any work that they've done, we pay them for, but we can end it prior to the sort of end of all the work phases. So.
Thank you. And then I would certainly be in favor of continued discussion about how to pivot with the task force. I think we have an awesome group of individuals and organizations compiled, and I think we can still keep rolling with that group with another facilitator.
Chris?
Matt, I'm assuming that in the original contract, it called for 4 reports from Barry Dunn. The last 2, one was an exploration of alternative models. The 4th one was an implementation of alternative models. I'm assuming all that's canceled now.
To the best of my knowledge, those reports would have come following task force meetings, and so we won't get to that phase with them.
Jaya?
Yeah, thank you. I want to start by saying thank you to Matt and to city staff and the mayor for making sure that what this council said we wanted to see happen and what we heard from the public was the guiding principle. I think that's really important. I think figuring out how to keep things moving along for the task force, there's a lot of good momentum, and I think there are ways that we can move forward. I guess my question, though, is just what is the communication to the task force members to kind of give them a revised, well, I'm sure we can't quite do a revised timeline yet, although I bet we can get there pretty quickly compared to some of the other pieces, but at least to let them know what is going on, because if it's just like, this is delayed, and, you know.
Right,
yeah.
right. Now that we have something firm that we can convey, I wanted to let you all know today first, and then make the announcement tonight, and then we'll send out an email to the task force tomorrow. There's not a lot we can say other than that there are no meetings scheduled at this point, and we hope that they will stick with us. And I personally would like to, obviously, we want to keep this going, so I expect we'll try to, we will look at procuring, going through the process to procure another facilitator and move forward. But at this point, what we can tell the task force is thank you so much for agreeing to help us, and stay tuned. It's been very fluid. So, Grace.
Then for later discussion, I would be curious, what's the difference between what's already been spent and what was budgeted?
Yeah, we'll know that once the final invoices are in. Don't have that information yet, but we'll let you know. Other questions? Okay, that's where we are on that. We'll move on to unfinished business, which has one item, which is Resolution 2024-08-058R, which is a resolution approving standardized employment agreement templates for city employees. HR, Michelle Brooks.
Hi, I believe that what you have in front of you in your packets tonight are the track change and the clean drafts that I believe and I hope reflect all the changes that were requested over the course of the meetings. I thank you for your patience. If anyone has any concerns about the drafts or questions, just let me know.
Grace.
Thank you for the updated version. I think a lot of things that we had discussed previously were in there. I just wanted to check on one of them that we had already agreed on a straw poll vote about the severance not being implemented retroactively. And so I guess my first question is, where is that reflected in here? And I think I may have answered it from what we had talked about before under Section 13 severance. I think we changed subsection A to within the first year subsequent to the execution of this agreement, rather than first year of employment to reflect that. Is that right?
That's correct. It was the execution of the agreement that changed it as opposed to first year in that appointment of position.
And I guess, where does it say, though, about when these agreements can be executed? Like, I don't know if there's something in the resolution or somewhere else that needs to state that these would be executed, like, at this time in the future, not retroactively, because I feel like if the contract were executed retroactively, then that severance still would apply that way, right?
The way we had envisioned it, and we've been talking about this, is our anticipation is that if the resolution is passed, then we'll be getting requests from the appointed employees to enter into these agreements. We'll be offering them. We will have to go through, though, and it'll take a little bit of time because we have to specify each agreement towards the terms particular to that employee. So it isn't that we will have all of them and have people come in and execute them, but persistent or consistent with the resolution, they will be offered to all of the appointees. And so some of them might be executed a little bit later than others, just because we can't get them all rolled out and executed the exact same day. But it would be that date of execution, which we're hoping would be relatively expedient, that would start that time period that's referenced in 13 or 12A, 13A, depending on which one you're looking at.
Okay, but you wouldn't go back in time with the contracts and say, we're executing it for 2019, because that's when you started it, saying that this would be this point in time moving forward exclusively.
No, execution is the date that the contracts are signed, and that's the start date for the tolling of the accruing of the severance.
Okay, and then I think actually section 2 of the resolution, you brought up about all city appointees in full permanent positions, and I think we're still missing that word all, which I think is very important in section 2 of the resolution.
I think it's in section 1, isn't it? In all full-time permanent positions.
Yes, okay, thank you. So then 2, okay, I guess all is implied in 1. Okay, thank you. And then my last question was, what about to my understanding, there's only one appointed employee who has an existing contract? I guess my question is, what about existing contracts that may be different from this one now?
Any standing contracts won't be altered by these contracts.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Mary Alice?
I don't have a question, but I'd like to make a motion.
Go ahead.
I'll move for approval, resolution number 2024-08058R, resolution approving standardized employment agreement templates for city employees.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Is there any discussion? Grace?
I was going to recommend, and I still am of the view, that we take a little more time to review this while it has been coming up a while. I think that it's an important legal document for our city leadership. This finalized version's only been available since Thursday. I personally would like to go through it another time, just a finer dive and make sure there's still nothing that's missing or that wasn't considered yet, have some additional legal review. And so I would like some more time with this one. Just feeling that I would like to go over this final version another time that I haven't had the full time to since Thursday.
Mary Alice?
From my perspective, we've had close to the final version for quite some time. We've had it up for discussion. Michelle has made all of the changes. I can't think of a change that she hasn't made that we've asked her to make. So I'm comfortable voting on this at this time.
James, did you want to weigh in?
Yeah, I guess I would agree with Mary Alice. I think this is the third or fourth go-round of conversation on this. I appreciate that we can always take more time and look at things longer, but I really believe that this has evolved the way that we've provided guidance, and I would prefer to go ahead and support it today.
Any other comments? Council people here present. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
No.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
No.
Ms. Wilkin,
Present.
Mr. Quisenberry,
Yes.
That is 3 yeses, 2 noes, 1 present, and the present goes with the majority. So that motion passes. There are no standing committee reports. We move on to the report out of Committee of the Whole.
All right. On
Mary
behalf
Alice,
of
go ahead.
on behalf of the Committee of the Whole, I'd like to move ordinance number 2024-10033, an ordinance fixing the salary of the city clerk elected for a definite term of office from 2025 to 2029 for approval.
Second.
Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? Grace?
I feel like I'd like to have kind of a bigger picture look, especially when we've had some, maybe it's separate and it's good to take them separately. Maybe there's some sense in considering things together with a few of our elected leader positions, with the mayor, the clerk, and then also some town positions. And while they're all kind of up, I feel like I'd like to take them as individual, but also as somewhat of a comparable package. So I may be just indecisive tonight, but I'd also be down to hold these off a little longer if we don't have time for election stuff. When's the time when they have to be in? We have till November 11th for town board, right? So,
November 2nd.
oh, 2nd for these.
So to clarify, the city stuff, the deadline is November 2nd, but township is the other November date. I don't remember if it's, well, it comes back the 12th.
November 20th is the deadline, but
That's it.
November 12th is when it will be voted on. But this has to be decided tonight unless you want a special meeting later in the week.
So I think as far as the clerk's proposal, I think that makes sense.
That's what's on the table right now.
Yep, so I will hold it at that for now.
Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Yes.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. Mary Alice.
Sorry, I was making a note. I apologize. I move approval of ordinance number 2024-10034, an ordinance fixing the salaries of city officers who are elected for a definite term of office from 2025 to 2029.
Second.
And with your permission, Mary Alice, would you take the chair?
I'll take the chair. The chair recognizes Diane.
I have, and it's in your packet, some supplemental background information to address this particular ordinance. Just to clarify, the clerk salary was incorporated into the chart that's attached to this ordinance that's before you. But in retrospect and in response and upon reflection, I would like to propose an alternative approach. And I want to start out by saying in recent years, the mayor's salary has been traditionally lower. Increases are modest, and that was deliberate. For back in 2017, we were in 2016. We were looking ahead to 2017, and the plan and the hope to fill the vacancy of a city administrator, which had been vacant for about 10 or 11 years. And so the thought back then, and it continues to this day, is that we invest in our full-time regular employees, starting with the city administrator, but every employee on down. So our elected official salaries have been relatively modest relative to our permanent employees. We also just completed a classification and compensation study, which was referred to last week. That resulted in some significant changes in salaries. All of this gets to the fact that, and it's been mentioned many times in the last week or two, the importance of staying competitive in the market for all levels of employees, from seasonal employees who do our landscaping all the way up to our highest level of professional employees. We have to stay competitive. So the proposals for mayor salary, the office of mayor, I made with that sort of thing in mind. However, after the decisions last week, I really want to address the disparity now in the office of the mayor and the office of the clerk salary, and actually now there's a larger disparity when you compare it to the proposed township salaries, but that's a whole different issue. Anyway, just to remind folks, the ordinance that you passed out of committee last week includes the annual salaries for the office of mayor, city clerk, and alderperson. And for the mayor and alderpersons, the proposal was to have a 2.5% annual salary increase for years 1 through 4, which is a total increase of 10.4% over a 4-year period. The city clerk's salary was increased by 11.84% in the first year, with an annual 3% annual increase for years 2 to 4. So in the desire to bring up the city clerk's position into a more competitive range, it's, I think, resulted in another unintended consequence that I hope that you consider addressing. In the past, the approach used to set salaries for the office of the mayor and city clerk was the approach used last week to set the salaries between the office of the mayor and the city clerk was inconsistent, and actually I think it's inequitable. For over 12 years, the salary differential between the two offices has ranged from 13.5% to 15.5%, and I believe it reflects, and it does reflect, the significantly greater complexity and responsibility associated with the office of the mayor. However, the decisions made last week reduced this differential to 5.6% by FY26 and to 4% by the end of the 4-year period, and actually is on a trajectory to have the city clerk make a higher salary than the mayor if you continue on that trajectory. So I think it remains important to maintain a distinction in salary to reflect differing levels of complexity and responsibility. I'm not advocating a decrease for the clerk. I am now advocating an increase for the office of the mayors and have the same annual percentage increases be applied to both positions. That means an 11.84% in year 1 for the office of the mayor and a 3% increase in years 2 through 4. That would make the mayor's salary in year 1 $81,785, year 2 $84,239, in year 3 $86,766, and in year 4 $89,369. After the conversation earlier this evening, you will, of course, note that this is still significantly less than what's being proposed for township salaries. City clerk salary stays as you passed it out of committee. You asked about the fiscal impact of both the implications for the clerk's salary. It's increased the baseline budget in FY26 in recurring expenses by $10,574. $10,574. If you applied the same percent increases to the office of the mayor's salary, there would be a total increase in the baseline budget for FY26 of $17,404. This increase to the baseline budget, and again, we're talking about putting 2026 salaries into the 2025 budget. For elected officials falls within the amount of funds available on a recurring basis in the 2025 budget and within the city's financial policy limit. So the revised recommendations based on an equitable approach, at least for setting the office of the mayor and the township or the city clerk salary, is provided in the chart on the bottom of page 76 of your packet. And I would ask that you consider amending the ordinance before you to reflect that.
Any questions for the mayor? James, do you have any questions?
I don't have any questions, just
All right.
discussion.
Should I hand the chair back to you, Mayor, or should I handle discussion?
Why don't you handle discussion?
Okay, I will handle discussion. Any discussion on the ordinance with the additional changes? Grace?
I had a question. I'm just trying to catch up here because it looks like the numbers in the packet are the updated numbers that you just read, right?
There's a supplemental memo that the mayor added to the packet. The memo is the one that contains the chart that has those suggested values, but the ordinance itself remains as you amended it at committee.
Okay, so you're saying we would need to amend the actual ordinance, but the tables in the memo are what you're proposing tonight.
And just to be clear, the only difference in that table is in the mayor's salary. The alderperson and city clerk's salaries are as you approved last week.
Thank you.
Chris?
Mary Alice?
Oh, okay, go for it, James.
Yeah, I just wanted to kind of revisit some of the things we talked about in the town board meeting. I will consider what we approved for the mayor's salary to be limiting on what I will support for the township supervisor salary, because the city is a close to $80 million operation with 280 people, and as the mayor put it, the complexity of the different areas under its responsibility is much greater because of that size and the different departments that are involved with it. So I am looking at the updated numbers, which start at 81,785. I don't know if they're the right numbers, but if the will of the council is to amend it and approve it as it stands, I would consider that to be limiting on how far I would go to support an increase in the supervisor's salary and also in the assessor's salary. I do appreciate the information that's been brought to the table to justify those added salaries, but the bottom line is the city is an $80 million operation with 280 people and multiple departments with multiple important aspects that are significantly different than an assessor's office, which has a specific function, complex and important, no doubt. Likewise, the supervisor's office, which has expanded, but we're talking about expanded to 25 people and $5 million budget. I would support the amendment that's here, but if council is thinking about, as town board, approving higher salaries for the supervisor or the assessor's area, I would suggest that we need to have that same approach and attitude to the mayor's salary.
All right, thank you. Chris?
I just for clarity, I just want to remind the public that what the mayor has proposed is not her salary. This is for the future.
Jaya?
Yeah, I am pleased to see these numbers go up. It's uncomfortable. It feels weird, right, to be like, let's spend more money, and it's always a tricky thing. But again, in order to make this something that more people with the necessary expertise can do, I think that this is more appropriate. I hear what James is saying in terms of the town board discussions. I again feel like that's in some ways separate because we have more time. We don't have time to go back and forth about this, but I do think that this is more appropriate than where we were last week.
Diane, did you want to say something?
Sure, I'll take the chair back at this point.
Okay, I'll relinquish the chair.
I just want us all to recognize, and I know we do, we care about these positions a great deal. We also have to always take, and I'm glad Chris reminded us again, you separate the position from the person in it, and each person brings their own personality, their own ideas, and their own goals to these positions. So you have to separate the position from the person, but the common denominator is we care about these positions. Thank you. Oh, go ahead, Grace.
Thank you. I'm in support of the increases that are proposed here. I would be open to even considering higher, especially given all the whole web of these kinds of things that we're considering. But again, I don't think that, we have the time to make kind of an informed decision about this. So I'm open to it, but I don't have any suggestions on any kind of informed changes. I'm torn with, as we've talked about, paying people fairly competitively for the hard work that it takes to do these things, and then also with that fiscal responsibility and being aware of the average household income in Urbana, which is nowhere near this. So I hear what people are saying all around, and I'm torn on this. I support what's on the table. I'm open to other options as well.
Mary Alice,
Oh, I'm not chair.
I'm the, go ahead, James.
who's the chair? I would like, I'm gonna make an amendment if that's acceptable at this point. And I'm looking at the table for mayor, which starts with May 1st, 2025 through April 30th, 2026. And I'm going to make this amendment with the hope that it tries to strike a balance with a lot of the information that we've received so far. And that would be to amend the mayor's schedule from the original 74,955, 76,829, 78,750, and 87,119. That schedule that starts at 7495 and goes up 3% a year over the 4 years. I would like to amend that to the first year being 85,000 and in going up 3% in the subsequent 4 years to 87,550, 90,176 and 50 cents, and then 92,881 and 80 cents. That's for 4 years, starting at 85 and going up 3% a year. That represents my feeling that this is, well, I'll let that motion for an amendment go out and see if I have a second, and then I'll speak to it.
I'll second.
And so if I can speak to it a little bit, this is going a little bit above what the proposal was, but getting closer to what the request has been from the supervisor and the assessor. And as we know, not always when somebody makes a request, that's not always how it works out. I'm hoping that we can use this as kind of a middle ground, and with the additional information we get over time, see if this lines up with an acceptable salary scale to consider for those positions, which should be comparable. But I still believe the mayor's job stands out as the degree of difficulty and expertise and understanding and complexity that it has.
And James, can you repeat those dollar values once again, just so we can confirm them?
Yes, I'm doing them off a spreadsheet, so I think they have to be right because they didn't rely on my math. It is 85,000 is the first number, then 3% increase I have for the first year as 87,550. 3% increase for the third year would be 90,176 and 50 cents.
Do you want to round that up or down?
And then the fine. That's up. We can ask Elizabeth that, but if she was around, but
It'll be rounded. Okay.
you know, okay. And then 92,881. I guess that would be 82 if you're going to round for the final year.
Okay. 92,882.
Yep.
And then city clerk and alderperson would remain as determined last week.
I'm not suggesting a change there.
Okay. We have a motion on the table to make those changes, motion made by James, seconded by Jaya. Any discussion? Grace?
I just had a question of the 10,000 relative increase in the baseline budget. Was that with your updated proposal numbers?
That was with what you passed out of committee last week. With my updated, it was a total of 17,404.
And now we're going up a couple thousand above that. Okay, thank you.
Let's vote on the amendment. Would be all those, let's see, clerk, we better call the roll.
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And now we move on to the main motion for ordinance 2024-10-034. Will the clerk please call the roll?
Can we have more discussion on the?
Pardon me, yes.
Yeah.
Chris,
Go,
Yeah.
go ahead, James.
Go ahead, Chris. No, Chris hasn't had a chance yet.
okay. I just want to divide the question of the alder people separately on a separate vote, please.
Okay. James,
I would second that.
okay. Dividing the question?
It doesn't need a second. It's a privileged motion, so we'll pull it out.
Did you have a discussion?
I want to speak to the alderperson amount, so if it's pulled out, I'll speak to it once we get the first part done.
Okay. Does anyone wish to speak to the mayor and city clerk? Okay, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And we have remaining the alderperson salaries, which is proposed to be $7,175, $7,354, $7,538, and $7,727. Chris, did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just wanted, again, from last week, it's just, I'm simply uncomfortable voting for this, but I want to stress that the current aldermen who do vote on this, they're voting again for the next council, not their own, benefit. We haven't invented a mechanism yet to resolve this. I just don't feel comfortable voting on it at all.
Any other discussion on the, well, I guess we need a motion. So we need a motion for the alderperson salaries.
Oh, because we divided the question.
Divided the question.
All right. I'll make a motion for the same ordinance, ordinance number 2024-10034, an ordinance fixing the salaries of city officers who are elected for a definite term of office from 2025 to 2029, specifically for the alderman salaries.
Is there a second?
Second.
Now discussion. James, I know you wanted to speak.
Yeah, and I'm going to kind of follow what Chris was saying. I know for me personally, I don't feel comfortable supporting this, but I'm in a position where I don't need to depend on it for my ability to serve on city council, and that's one of the things that I think is important. It may have been Jaya that mentioned this last week, or it may have been Mary Alice. I'm sorry, I don't remember who when I watched the recording, but the idea should be that anybody who is eligible to run for city council should run and be able to do so without substantial barriers. I mean, it is a lot of time in the evenings on Mondays, but it's also a lot of time reading materials and preparing, and it should, if a person of any kind of means should be able to put their name out there and be able to serve without it being a serious issue. I think in terms of, childcare for a single parent who might want to serve on council. And so I do believe that a modest kind of increase like this to support people who want to serve the community in this way, because we need more people to do so, and it would be great if we had more people to do so. I am gonna support this. I wouldn't support it for myself, but I support it for the idea that anybody should be able to serve who's willing to serve.
Grace.
have some similar feelings like it's a conflict, and also understanding that this is the next term of people who are undecided and will be decided by the electorate. I wanted to mention that the way I think about this is in my life budget of time, I budget about 10 hours a week to city council. And with this, when you do the math, that comes out to what it has been at our 7,000, about $15 an hour, which is, for me, I think is a reasonable, fair minimum wage. Like I said, I didn't know a whole bunch of people make so much more money, but I think that's fair. That's our state minimum that we've gone up, you know. I think this puts it at like 16 some dollars an hour. So I think that that is comparable, where people aren't doing it for the money. But I mean, I did quit another part-time job to take this on, and I think a lot of people in similar positions that you need to at least be making a minimum amount of what you could be making with that same amount of time doing something else in your life, but not so much that you're in it for the money. I think it's enough that if someone needed to hire a babysitter or have transportation or some other thing, that could be allowable. So I could go either way. I think the proposed increases are modest. And I think that overall, that range of $15 to $16 an hour for the amount of work we put in, I think is a modest amount that's also reasonable to make it accessible.
Any other comments? I don't think we did mention it at all yet, but the alderpersons do get a annual allowance. I believe it's now $900 that it's available to them to spend to go to conferences or to buy supplies. What? So that is available to alderpersons as well, in addition to their annual salary. So, all right, I think we're ready to vote on the alderperson salary as reported in the chart. So that would be, will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans,
Present.
Ms. Hersey,
Yes.
Ms. Colasetti,
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin,
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry.
Yes.
That motion passes. And that concludes the Committee of the Whole report. There are no reports of special committees. We have one last item of business, and that is the appointment to the Firemen's Pension Board of Trustees, which may be new to some people. But this is for the appointment of Christine Francisco to the Firemen's Pension Fund Board of Trustees. This is for a term ending June 30th, 2025. In the city of Urbana, members of the Firemen's Pension Fund Board of Trustees are partly appointed by the mayor. Under the Illinois Pension Code, 40 ILCS 504-121, the Pension Fund Board of Trustees consists of 5 members. 2 people are active firefighters elected by active members of the pension fund. 1 member is a retired firefighter who's a beneficiary of the fund, elected by the retired firefighters. And then there are 2 members appointed by the mayor. These mayoral appointments are part of the municipality's role in overseeing the pension fund, though the elected members ensure that firefighter representatives also have a voice on the board. Chris Francisco is a 30-year employee of the city of Urbana. She's currently serving as the financial services manager. She also is the person who sends you your monthly financial bills and your quarterly financial reports. And along with many, many other things. She brings a wealth of experience from her long tenure with the city, and that is incredibly valuable in overseeing the pension fund's operations. This appointment is consistent with the city's tradition of selecting current or former employees associated with the finance department to serve on the board, given the substantial financial knowledge and their knowledge of the city itself and how the department and the pension board works. So I would ask a motion to appoint Chris Francisco to the Fire Pension Board.
I will move that we appoint Christine Francisco to the Firemen's Pension Board of Trustees for a term ending June 30th, 2025.
Second. Moved by Mary Alice, seconded by Sharice. Any discussion? All those in, Mary Alice?
I just want to say that when we look at the pensions for both police and fire, fire always comes out on top. So I hope that we can maintain that strategy and that success rate.
And recently, the fire pensions were all combined at the state level, too. So it's, a lot of changes has occurred in the landscape in the last couple of years. Any other discussion? Will the clerk please call the roll?
Ms. Wu,
Yes.
Mr. Evans?
Yes.
Ms. Hersey?
Yes.
Ms. Colacetti?
Yes.
Ms. Wilkin?
Yes.
Mr. Quisenberry?
Yes.
That motion passes. And with no further business before the council, this meeting is adjourned.